This is part 2 of the installation video for the John Lewis Home Deluxe Closet in a Box system. We brought our 72-inch length of shelf out to our cutting station, and we're about to cut it for the top shelf, which is going to be mounted at 84 inches above the ground. So we're at our cutting station. We've got a table set up. We have a compound miter saw set up. This has an 80-tooth blade on it, so it's going to cut a nice clean cut through our wood. We've got some spacers as well to make sure everything is nice and safe for our cutting. I just want to point out that we do have a factory finish at both of our ends. Now, in our installation, the left side of our tower will be exposed, so I would suggest to maintain the factory ends at that side and do the cutting at the right-hand side, because that's going to be right against the wall and in the side brackets. Also, another thing to be aware of is the front rail. This is going to be the front side of your closet. That's what you're going to be seeing. So make sure that that's a nice clean finish, or that it's the edge that you actually want to be looking at and not the back side, because you won't see that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we need to cut the back rail. We're going to measure from the end of the back rail in, and the measurement that we had been talking about earlier was approximately 58 inches. And 58 inches would allow us to have that 32 inches of double hang. But what's happening here is the 58-inch mark is actually falling just inboard of the side of the slat. Now, I really do have some play inside on my closet, so I'm going to move that to 58 3/8 of an inch, which is about mid-slat. So that's approximately where I'm going to cut. That's going to be fine as far as positioning of everything, so I'd rather be doing that than cutting through the slat. If you only have to cut a small section out of the slat, and you do have a sliding compound miter, you can do that. One note of caution, though, is there may be brad nails in this area, so when you do cut this, be sure that you do have your safety glasses on, or perhaps remove those nails beforehand. Alternatively, if you are cutting a good portion of this slat off, then you can just remove the balance after you've made that cut. But for our installation, we're going to be cutting in the gap at 58 3/8. So I've marked it just quickly with a pencil there. I'm now going to take my speed square and strike a square line across this. And I'm only going to do this back rail first. We'll discuss cutting the front rail afterwards. Okay, we're all set to cut. Once again, a reminder, be sure you wear your safety goggles when cutting all material. So we're going to get this shelving in position. Loosen this up a little bit. Make sure you're square. Push your shelving against your fence. That's where I want to cut it. Okay, that's a good clean cut. So that's going to be the back shelf. Back rail, I should say. Just remember that. So now, what we want to do is look at cutting our front rail. In many cases, the back width of your closet may be a little different than the front width of your closet, based on the angle at which that side wall comes into the back wall. So make sure you take that into consideration when you're cutting the front rail. We're about to cut the front rail, so I want to flip this over. The travel of my saw is only 12 inches, so I can't cut a 16-inch material by just pushing it all the way through. Now, we've looked at our sidewall, and our sidewall was very square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use our square here and put this across and mark the location where I want to cut it, and we should be good to go there. And just out of curiosity, I'm going to take a measurement from the rail, and we're at 58 3/8, right on. So everything is very good with this shelf and our square setup inside. So the second cut, the shelf is actually upside down. We're then going to do a cut for that back shelf. for the back rail. Okay, and that's the end of our cutting for that system. So we have the front edge, factory finish at the left side, our cut end at this side, which has a nice clean edge on it. Any type of little nicks or damage to that edge will be touched up at the end of the job with our touch-up stain pen. If you don't have a miter saw or chop saw or circular saw, you can cut our shelving just with a regular hand saw or back saw. I'll show that technique right now. By using a table and placing the shelving like that on the table, and your speed square, position your speed square where you'd like to cut your shelving. I'm going to put it right in between these slats, and just go nice and slowly to get things started. And with your speed square, it's going to ensure a nice square cut. Okay, that's going to be the end of the cut. Reasonably nice cut, maybe a few little extra chips, but those can be dealt with by the touch-up pen at the end. So then you can flip the shelving over, cut the other rail, and you're good to go. Alright, the next step in our installation is to install the shelf that we just cut. Remember that we cut the end that we'd like to be putting against the right side wall, so let's make sure that happens. So the factory end is over on the left side of the tower, which is going to be exposed. So step up onto our stool here, and we will just position our shelf into the shelf end clip as well as into the L clips on the back wall, and this slid in very nicely. Sometimes, depending on the position of the L clips, you might have to remove the shelf and sort of pry that L clip forward. You might also have to loosen the bottom screw a little bit if there's a bit of warpage in the wall, and sometimes you'll have to just sort of pound down on the back in order to get it in place. Right now that can sit in place temporarily. I'll go grip my drill and a couple screws to tack this in place. So these are the number 4 by 3/4 inch screws that are going to be coming in from the underside of our L clips. Okay, so we've got that one in. That one's in, and then we'll go into the shelf end clip. Okay, so that's a few screws in place, and you can finish up the rest of those screws on the underside of the L clips. Okay, the next step in the installation is to locate the tower brackets. The tower brackets are the brackets that will hold the vertical gables in place on your tower. First step here is to go to the end of the top shelf and locate the approximate center of that last slat. I put a little pencil mark here to denote that. Next step is to put up your 4-foot level, and on that pencil mark, which is the center of that last slat, and establish a nice plumb line on the wall. Checking my bubbles, everything looks good there. The next step is we're going to locate the positions of these tower brackets. The instruction manual indicates the first bracket is to be set at 3 inches down from the top. So I put a little vertical line here and a little tick mark for that first bracket. The second bracket is to be located at 35 inches down from the top. So we'll put a little vertical line here as well as a tick mark here. The last line is to be at 67.5 inches, and I'll have to move my level down for that. Now the clips are located so that they do not fall within the grooves of the tower gables. So that's why it's important to hit right on these measurements. so you will actually have some wood to screw the tower brackets into. Okay, the next step in the process is to locate the right side tower brackets. These are to be located at the same elevation as the left side brackets, and the separation distance between the two lines is 25¼ inches. So the first thing, rather than trying to take a horizontal line and a measurement, I'm just going to strike a horizontal level line across from my 3-inch mark across to the approximate location of where this side tower bracket is going to be positioned. Okay, and I'm going to go down to my 35-inch mark and do the same thing. So locate that, get a horizontal line, horizontal level line, and strike a pencil mark here in the approximate area where that is going to be positioned. And then you can do the third one after that. Okay, now that we have our 3 level lines projected from our left side to the right side, we want to now make a mark as to where that right tower bracket is going to be located. So the magic number, as I said, was 25¼ We're going to measure across to that point and put a nice vertical tick there. That's the first one. At the top line, the middle line, is now set, and then you can do the third line. Okay, now that you have your 3 marks set on the right side of your tower, just as a double check, you want to make sure that these are plumb with each other. So extend your 4-foot level from the first one to the next one, and just do a check on that. And that looks right on. And then you can slide it down and do the check from the middle line down to the bottom line. Okay, so the next step, now that we've got the location of the tower brackets marked on our wall, is to actually fix them to the wall. So these are the tower brackets that we're going to now position over top of the markings that we set earlier. So right now, on the top left corner, I've got my levels set up, and what we have to do is position the hole between the 2 vertical sections of that tower clip over top of that marking. So I've got that in place. I have it plumb with my level, and I'm now going to put a pencil mark in these 3 holes. Alright, now that we have our 3 holes located on the wall, if you remember from before, we actually put a small little dimple in the center of each hole. We are not on studs at this location, so we're going to have to use screw anchors. The towers can be supported on all screw anchors. It still is very solid on the wall. You do not have to hit studs with any of these screws if it does not fall on a stud line. But if it does, then yes, certainly screw them into your studs. So I pierced the center of the hole. I'm now going to drill a hole for my screw anchor there, there, and there. So I've got those 3 in. I'm going to put my screw anchors in. Okay, 3 screw anchors in nice and tight. Okay, the screw anchors are in. We're now going to put the tower bracket in. Not going to put these all the way in to start. Let's get all 3 of them in. So what we like to do, in case these brackets do not all line perfectly up with one another, is to actually just tighten the bracket that's going to be behind the tower gable. So that's going to be here. So I'm going to tighten that guy in place, and then we'll leave these out slightly, and we'll tighten them in after the tower gable's in place. So we have all 3 screws in, ready to receive the tower gable. Okay, while you were away, we've finished putting up all of our tower bracket clips. So these are all in place. So you can see we've got the top, middle, and bottom on both the right side and the left side. So the next step in the process is to get the tower frame ready for installation. So we have that on our floor right now, and the tower gables are the ones that have the grooves in the sides. These grooves are going to be on the inside of the tower. Those grooves accept the adjustable shelves. So the first step in this is we're going to put together the bottom piece onto the tower. So the bottom shelf on the tower is a fixed shelf, and it's connected using cam bolts and cam nuts. So what I've already screwed in 3 of these, 2, 3 here. We're going to put in the 4th one. So you just want to go slowly in until the actual rubber bushing touches the wood. You don't want to over screw that or over tighten that. So the next step is we're going to turn one of the panels vertically. We're going to then take the bottom of the tower, and you can see that it's got a hole in the bottom. That's going to receive the cam nut after we connect the 2 together. So that's now connected. Then we take the cam nut. The cam nut goes in beneath this shelf, and it's about a 1/4 turn. You don't want to really crank this, go more than a 1/4 turn, or that cam nut could snap. But that's all you do, just snug it in place, and then that's fixed. So we'll do the other one at the bottom here. And just snug that in place, and now that's all set. So that's the one side. You quickly do the other side, and then we're ready to put the tower up. Okay, we're now all set to install our tower onto the wall. So we've got all of our clips in, our tower standing up, the bottom is in. Basically this step involves lifting up the tower on a bit of an angle so that you get the notches in underneath the top shelf, and then we push this all the way up to the top and push it in against our brackets. So now the next step is to push it up, and it should be pretty tight when you're pushing it up due to the friction of the brackets. But what we want to try to do is to push these up so that we're tight here against the underside of that back rail. Okay, so that's going to stay for us temporarily. We're now going to tack this in place. Okay, so we're going to take a number 6 by 3/4 inch screw and screw this into the one of the tower brackets. So I'm going to be lifting up this left gable while pushing it against the back wall and putting in my number 6 screw. Okay, and you got to be careful there. You don't want to strip that screw. That should hold this tower in place for our next step. Okay, we're now ready to tack the right-hand side of the tower into the wall through the tower brackets. So the first step here, again, is we want to push that tower side all the way up to the top, which is now tight against the back. I'm pushing it against the wall with my right knee, and we'll put the middle screw in the tower bracket here as well. Okay, so I've tightened that up. Now just a couple points. You may want to just snug that in at the end with a hand driver because you don't want to strip that. Also, if that screw hole is going to end up really close to the back, you may want to pre-drill that as well. Okay, so that's that. Then the last step, now that we have the tower tacked to the wall, that we often do is we're going to check at the front, and we're going to extend a level across from one groove to the other, and we'll see how level everything is. It should be right on, and in fact it actually is very good. So that's a result of our top shelf being level, and us pushing the tower sides up to the underside of that top shelf. So everything is level and in place, in a good position for us to continue. Okay, the tower's up. We've actually put in all of the screws into our tower brackets on all 6 brackets. What I like to do now is I like to hand tighten these so that everything's nice and snug, but it's not over tightened. And the main reason is so we don't have any splitting of the wood, and also that you don't strip any of the threads or the heads off of the screws. So just with a Phillips driver, we'll tighten that up. And if you remember, we left these 2 screws on all of our tower brackets slightly backed off. We're now going to tighten those as well by hand, so that those are nice and tight. And they're not stripped, the anchors aren't stripped, and nothing's going to be coming off. So I'll do that on the rest of the brackets, and then the tower is almost done with one more step after this. Okay, our next step and last step to secure the tower sides to the unit is to fasten the sides to the top using the vertical clip. The vertical clips, there's 4 of them. They're the ones that do not have the U-shape at this location here. So what we're going to do, as per the instruction manual, is these vertical clips are slid over top of the last slat on the top shelf, and they then are positioned so that they're right over top of this tongue on the tower sides. So push it into there, and then with the number 4 by 3/4 screw, you come down from the top and into the slat. So basically this ties the vertical clip into the slat, and depending on the amount of room you have between the top shelf and your ceiling, you may have to use a hand driver for this. That's what I'm doing right now. So I'm just going to get that one in place there, and then we'll move on to the next step of fastening it to the tower side. Okay, now the next step in fastening our vertical clip to the tower side is with the number 6 by 3/4 inch screw. We've got the vertical clip over top of the tongue of the tower side, and we're just going to screw that into the bottom hole. Nice and slowly. Watch your torque on this so you don't split any wood. You just snug that in like that. If there's any risk of this splitting, you'd want to pre-drill that with a small bit in order to help prevent that. So that's the end of that step. The next step will be to put in the other 3 vertical clips on each of the 3 corners. Okay, the last step in securing the right tower side to the top shelf is to take your other 2 vertical clips. The instruction manual shows that the vertical clips should be positioned in this fashion so that they're coming around the outside of the tower side. Sometimes, however, the tower side does not line up perfectly with one of these slats. So you have to make a decision really on where you want to put that vertical clip. In our particular case, we have turned it over onto the outside, we've screwed it into the top, and we're starting to screw it into the side. In other cases, you may want to come over in this fashion where it comes over and it ends up on the inside. In both cases, you will screw the number 6 by 3/4 inch screw into the tongue of this tower side, both at the front and at the back.